Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purpose Tune podcast. My name is Kong Shang, and I am the host of the Purpose Tune podcast. The goal of my show is to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge, inspire you to act, and get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. Now, I'm very excited about today's episode's guest. My guest is Dr. MayKao. She is the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and founding Dean, Morrison Family College of Health at the University of St. Thomas. The University of St. Thomas is the largest private university in Minnesota. Prior to that, she was a former president and CEO at Wilder Foundation, where she spent 10 years in this top role, leading the organization through transformational changes to improve relevancy and impact. And I'm just so excited to have you on, MayKao. And let's check in. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. It's been a busy morning, and now it's just this is a great conversation to have, and it's what my life has been about. So this should be really fun.
Right. I love that. And, I'm very intentful in terms of the people I invite to my show. People who I know and I see have lead by example, and they're always on this journey of purposeful leadership. And when I think about purposeful leadership, I often think about you. And so often some of the other folks that have changed my life. So let's start there. What's your definition of purpose?
Well, I like to tell people that purpose comes from actually being in community with others. In other words, you can't find it by sitting in a room by yourself.
Right.
So, yeah, it requires action. And for me, that action that's really driven me all my life in terms of my values and what I want to do is really working to improve the lives of others. And primarily, I love my purpose-driven life has always been about delivering oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people ask, well, what is that? A number of years ago, I actually went through a leadership program. Bill George, who's former CEO of Medtronic, wrote a book called Discover Your True North. And he was piloting this with nonprofit directors and community leaders. So I thought, okay, I'll sign up. And one of our assignments was to actually write our purpose statement. And my purpose statement was to deliver oxygen. Why oxygen? Because I love people. And oxygen is required to live. So the intersection in my life has always been delivering oxygen to people who have no hope left. I love that process of delivering and inspiring hope and opportunity when people are looking around and are at their wits' end. I hope to be not always the guiding light, but an inspiration for others so that they know that they're not alone and that they can do whatever it is that they want to do, and that they will finish whatever it is that they start. So I made a pact with myself in my 20s. I decided that if I was going to live, I was going to actually do whatever I wanted. And yeah. So I'm someone who has lived my passion through my jobs and my service, and even through my family in a way that brings optimism and hope to others. And it's contagious, right? When you're that kind of person, you just accept people for who they are and you love them for what they have without judgment. It turns out that that's a really difficult skill to have in the workplace and elsewhere. And so purpose means to me that you're very intentional about what you're doing, how you're doing it, who you're doing it with, and even sometimes how you're thinking and judging. So I've made a life out of really being a bridge to communities and people who are disenfranchised, disadvantaged in some way. And it's amazing, like from CEOs to people who are homeless and on the streets to maybe public policy students who wonder why they even went into the first place. There's been a lot of joy in giving back and just listening and offering wisdom.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing about what that means to you. How do you inspire people to tap into their purpose? Because what I'm hearing from you is that it takes a lot of courage to be who you are in this world that wants you to be someone else.
Yeah, so I was a kid who grew up in poverty as a refugee child, and being a Hmong girl, growing up in St. Paul in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of support for girls to actually become educated in the Hmong community. And because the community was poor and also lacked its own resources, um, I had to make use out of what I had. And, sometimes that was cooking one egg to share with four other siblings.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you live a hard life, especially as a child, you tend to be very grateful as an adult for what you have. And
Mhm.
so I think a lot about my early childhood, just growing up, being a teenager, being stigmatized and discriminated against, um, thinking that the journey from Laos, being born in Laos, coming here and then finishing college is the most difficult journey I'll ever have in my life,
Mhm.
um, and also the most worthy journey. And so, what helped me through that time and what I've seen now professionally through literally now 27, 28 years of professional work is that people all want to feel important.
Mhm.
They all want to feel significant and seen. They all want to be thought of as unique and worthy human beings. And even though I'm not like I'm a spiritual person, even though I'm not a pastor, I'm kind of close, right? I've had pastors work for me, but I think that when you love what you're doing completely and you embrace fully anyone who's in front of you, that tends to inspire them. So I'm the kind of person who sometimes when I first meet people, because I understand what it means to not have enough or not to feel like you're enough.
Mhm.
People often just feel comfortable telling me their entire life story. Actually, yeah, it's sort of like without constraints. Um, so I think I would say it's empathy is inspiring. Listening to people, just sitting quietly, um, giving people what they want and what they need. And a lot of times people don't know what they want and need,
Mhm.
and that's okay too. And it turns out that we live in, either a very materialistic society or a society that judges too instantaneously. And so withholding judgment and just being with people is very inspiring for them and listening to them. So it's always about the other person for me. Um,
Mhm.
and at times, because this is just what you have to do in the work world or in your career, it has to be about you because you're the leader who's making decisions. That's when it can be about you because you're actually taking that burden of accountability away from the people you supervise or the issues that you're overseeing. But to this extent that I can in my career, I've always let people have a choice. They get to make that decision. And if they don't want to have that choice and make it, then I get to make it. But that's very rare. I like
Mhm.
to actually guide and supervise and manage through consensus.
Mhm.
So, and that turns out to be also better for everyone and to create a very inclusive culture.
Mhm.
And also to create a very powerful organization, right? Because that's what I've done is I've run multi-million-dollar organizations since the age of 27. Yeah.
You're quite an inspiration to a lot of members in the community and myself included. What was it about this gift that you had that really you've tapped into to empower yourself to be a role model to people?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important for people to know, just that how you arrive and how people see you today isn't how you grew up or what you were um, as as you were moving throughout your life or career. In other words, the people I've met along the way who have inspired me, um, and a lot of those have been clients that we've served. Kids that I got out of gangs, right? When I was in my 20s, doing gang intervention work in
Yeah.
Frogtown. Yeah, I mean, I was like 5 foot, I don't know, I'm still 5'1". I think I'm shrinking, but 5'1",
I can't
like
tell.
105 pounds or something, working in like, some of the most gang-ridden neighborhoods. But I think that, the collective set of people whose lives have been improved, or people that I've surrounded myself with, have really helped make me who I am. So, I was like a kind of like a rebellious militaristic person in my 20s.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was out there with a megaphone, like really like an actual megaphone, um, doing direct advocacy. I remember being up at the legislature and calling out Hmong men who had more than one wife, and people were all angry at me in the Hmong community, and I had hate letters written to my work and things. So these, I call these character building experiences, where
Right.
you kind of learn how to soften over time. And I think one of the funny things now, of course, is looking back at that time, I was inspiring all the way. And I don't know if it was a gift. I mean, I think it was more like a curse in a lot of ways, especially when I was younger, because people would be like, well, you're this young Hmong woman. We don't know why you're like getting hundreds of people to train out at like Lake Phelan, for, for some community organizing event, or, I'd go and meet with legislators, and I'd actually convince them to do stuff. And people were really mad at me. So I think that if I really look deep inside, it's really just because I have a deep sense of justice, and I truly do love all human beings, and I never want to leave anyone behind.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's because I've been left behind, and also I've seen a lot of people in the community that have been left behind, and I don't want to wish that on anyone. And so, because I have all this privilege now, education, opportunity, I make a comfortable living. I just think, well, what's the point of all this? If I have all this material wealth, all this knowledge, all this power,
Mhm.
it's really meaningless if I don't use it to make a difference for others. And it's because of my sense of personhood and my love of humanity. That's
Mhm.
my gift. I love
You won my
humanity.
heart.
Yeah, I love humanity. Even the really, kind of like scary ones, like people just don't get it. I mean, when I was 18, like after high school, I had to work because I knew I was going to go to college because I'd gotten into Brown University, but I didn't have any money for my plane ticket. I had to work all the time. So on a senior project in high school, I had to do an observational paper, and I went to this group home for people with disabilities to do an observation. I wrote a paper, and I thought, well, this seemed like an interesting place. I'll go and work there. It was a care facility that had 16 adults with disabilities. Some of them have mental health issues too. And I worked there all summer. Um, and some people would maybe be scared off by that kind of experience. I actually, the first day I worked there, because I was, again, 105 pounds, 5'1", lifting people who were maybe like, 1.5 times my weight and size, doing toileting and brushing people's teeth. I did throw up after the first day because I had never helped anyone with toileting before. And
Mm,
I called the social worker and I said, I can't come back. And
mm,
she said, yes, you can. You do it. Just come back. And so, because I hadn't really lined up a different job, I decided to go back and try it again. And what ended up happening to me was I realized that I was the kind of person who could love people who had nothing. Like
mhm,
they couldn't even be fully present. Um, they couldn't really fully interact with me, and I
mhm,
still loved them. And
mm.
so, and not a lot of people can do that kind of work. But yeah, I'm still like that. So I have so many stories of being in places where, professionals who wear suits like I do now, right? are so scared, right? But I was like, whatever, I don't care. Bring it
You're
on, you
still,
know?
well, it ties back to your North Star, right? That's who you are. That's your purpose. That's what makes you distinctively unique. And that's how you drive impact in people's lives, is your ability to love them no matter what stage in their life.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are still in various stages in their life. Like I struggle with, like I also, so I work in the people business, HR, and
Hmm.
part of that being good at what you do is you have to love people. You have to love their strengths and weaknesses, and but there comes a point where you have to draw a line. And
Hmm.
where do you find that boundary?
Yeah, well, it's different boundaries with different people,
Mhm,
different groups over time. So it depends on if it's a work situation or a home situation, or if it's just kind of your inner situation. Um, but I'm a very reflective person, and so whenever I make a mistake or I've crossed a boundary, or I've done something that I don't really think is makes me uncomfortable. Usually, it's something that makes me very uncomfortable.
mhm,
Um, I I try not to do it again.
mhm,
Like I make that decision consciously, to never think that about myself again, or to never do that again.
mhm,
As a leader, as a supervisor, as a wife, as a
mhm,
mom, I just always give myself that opportunity for self correction. And so the boundaries are your values, and
mhm,
how you consistently show up with your behaviors. If your behaviors are not aligned with those values, and you don't like yourself, or you don't like the situation,
mhm,
um, then you have an opportunity to change it. And it turns out that a lot of people in the world, they move through these negative patterns, and they say they want to live a purpose driven life, but they're really not acting that way.
mhm,
um, and I try not to act against those. And so my boundaries for myself are about generosity,
mhm,
about never a handout, or thinking that people are trying to take something from me without a hand up.
mhm.
Um,
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, I've got a really deep value around education and sharing knowledge, which is what brought me to the University of St. Thomas to create this new college. Um, yeah, and so I think that every person has their own boundaries for their lives. um and I was thinking about a time when I act not in accordance with my values. um and it didn't feel good, right? Like I used to think, oh, I'm a generous person, except I was generous with my time, but I was never generous with my financial resources.
Mhm,
And I think it's because I came out of poverty, right?
mhm,
Didn't hit 200% of poverty until the 10th grade, when I
mhm,
went from free to reduced lunch. So I'd had a life of never having enough, and then I had enough, but I didn't want to give any away. And
mhm,
um, I had a talk with myself, and I decided I was going to change, and so I did. Yeah, so now I'm much more financially generous than before. But you
mhm.
can't only be generous with your words, because sometimes you need to be generous with your other resources. So yeah, so there's self-correction, but you decide, and you have the ability to develop those corridors for yourself, and nobody can tell you what some of those are.
Mhm.
Yeah, nobody can tell you.
Right. It seems like it's a self-discovery process, and you know yourself more than anyone else. So it takes reflection to see for yourself what makes you feel more comfortable, and then act upon those
Yeah,
steps to
right,
develop.
exactly. So like, yes, I've worked with people who are coming out of homelessness, women who've been battered, kids who are coming out and their parents throw them out. They don't have a place to live, they're rejected by society. And I've also like worked with people who are very wealthy, like people who are
Mm,
multimillionaires, and they still don't think they have enough,
mm,
because they haven't thought for themselves, who am I competing against? Who am I in the world? And it's like,
mm,
really the data says if you make about 64 or $65,000 a year with a family of four, you're kind of okay. Everything else is just icing on the cake.
Right.
At least here in Minnesota, that's the statistic here. Average median income for a family of four, where you can actually make your basic needs meet. Yeah, it's a lot less than most people think. And so it turns out that when you boil everything down, a lot of what we create for ourselves by way of friendships or, careers or whatever, I mean, we've kind of, those are self-imposed constraints that that get us away from a purposeful life. And I'm not having that. That's just not who I am. And I've never been that way. So it makes me, tends to make for a happy person, right? And
Right.
it's not like the whole minimalist movement that's out here now. I mean, it's like, oh no, I like my comfy things.
Yes, yes. I think
Yeah,
if there's
yeah,
no shame in, celebrating our accomplishment and in the things that we owe it to ourselves, things that we deserve in our life. At the
yeah,
same time, having that perspective of boundaries and what is too much, and tying it back to your point about the you know the concept of fulfillment, right? I mean, the folks that are multimillionaires, that are wealthy, still feel like they don't have enough. um, I see that there's opportunities for either a mindset shift or just opportunities for reflection and being grateful.
yeah,
um, I think gratitude plays a huge part in our happiness.
yeah,
And if we could step back, like you're saying, reflect on, our possessions, and just think about what we have that maybe perhaps, folks in the world, in different parts of the world, don't have. I think that we tend to be more grateful because of those differences.
well, yeah. And I think it's like, it's not really just about financial resources. It can also be about the projection of your ego and yourself
Right.
in relation to others. Like, I know people who are unhappy because they want to be farther in their career because they're in their 40s, or um, they wish they were skinnier. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you make those things the source of comparison, you're always comparing yourself to things that other people value, and maybe you think you value too. But like, comparison to me is a negative road.
Mhm.
um, and it leads to discontent and dissatisfaction. And so I
Mhm.
try not to do that, um, because if you do that and you speak that way as well, and by the way, being Hmong, this is how I was parented. Like, my parents always compared us to others, which is probably why I hate it. But and there's nothing wrong with, like, being competitive, but when you can constantly compare what you've achieved with what someone else has achieved, um, everybody's in their own time zone and in their
Mhm.
I call it like their set of constraints in their lives.
Mhm.
And you're never going to be like this person or that person. You're
Mhm.
never going to achieve, you know like the way that your next door neighbor is achieving. So the only way to make all this spinning stop so that you're not happy with your life is to say, I need to be grateful for what I have, and I need to um, uh, also do the most that I can, but not be worried about, you know, what society is telling me is
Mhm.
important, or what even what you yourself are telling you sometimes
Mhm.
is really important, because we can be our best allies and also our worst critics, right?
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you move away from this self-critic mindset? Like, how do you, how do you, I guess, develop behaviors or thought patterns to ensure that, you are important, that you are powerful, that you are enough, that you are living this for, purpose-driven life, that people need you. Because I've met a lot of people in my life, on a social level and a professional level, and there can be some pretty toxic people out there, in terms of just the way how they view themselves, in a negative way,
Hmm.
how they create drama to get them, to feed into the ego. Like, how do you deal with all of that? To then say, look, like, I am a person of value. I believe I'm important and powerful, and I'm going to show up that way.
Yeah. Well, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, "No one can make you feel inferior but yourself."
Mm,
So now, why did she say that as the first lady? Yeah, well, because psychologically, we give that power away to other people, so that they can make us feel small. And as
mm,
long as you don't do that, you're going to be fine.
mhm.
So,
Right.
yeah. So
So-
don't surround yourself with people who make you feel small,
right.
and don't don't make yourself feel small. Um, I guess the other thing I think about a lot is, um, every human being is unique, and I'm a unique human being.
Mhm,
Nobody understands us better than we ourselves do.
mhm.
Um, and so nobody has a right to tell us who we are and what our personalities are, um, because we get to change if we want to. And so surround yourself with nutritious people.
Mm.
Um, don't give your power away. Um, don't make you feel small. Um, and try your best. And if you've done your best, then that's good enough.
Oh, that's so amazing. It really warms my heart. This is
Yeah,
powerful stuff. I mean, I know people out there that need this, that need to hear this, and they're probably struggling, and they have a lack of direction or guidance, and they're looking for inspiration and resource. And I hope that
yeah,
this show will get some ideas into their head, and
yeah,
so that they can take action and improve on their life.
yeah. Well, and people are imperfect, and you are imperfect, and I am imperfect, and the only perfect being is God, right? I mean,
Mm,
so
right.
so unless we think we're God, we're not going to be perfect, and that means that self-acceptance and not allowing others to diminish our value,
Mhm,
um, regardless of what society says, is really important. I mean, I think a lot about communities of color, the GLBTQI plus communities, children, people who often don't have voice. I mean, I think, and like, I think about young people, right, who aren't fully emancipated, who are living in very difficult situations,
mhm,
because they're children. They don't have the kind of power that we should give them
mhm.
to have a safe and productive life as a little person.
Right.
So those of us who are allies have to stand up for them. Um, but like the human condition is never static, and so I think that we have a lot of negative messages in our modern worlds, in our society, that will make us feel worthless. And if we fall victim to that, and especially right now, if you look at the racism that we're experiencing in
Mm,
society, so openly, and the climate of hate,
mm,
um, it's not okay. And so those counteracting forces have to be both internal and also external messages that
mm,
we give to all these different populations. And the message that we have to give, and that people of privilege like myself, economically have, is and who can speak English. I mean, I grew up with parents who spoke very little English. Um, it's the you don't think you're that powerful, but it's because you haven't really tried. Also, you
mm.
can be very powerful if you want to be.
Right.
The question is, are you courageous enough to do it? Like this
Mhm,
podcast that you have. I mean, what's nothing's preventing us from doing these things,
mhm.
and if we want to do them, we can.
Right.
Just focus on it, right?
Exactly. Again, we can be our most critical person, but also our greatest advocate too.
Yep.
And I don't know who said this quote, but if you want to be great, you surround yourself with the greats, and they too will make you feel like you're great.
Uh-huh.
But that quote is pretty powerful.
Uh-huh.
I think one of the success habits um, that I have is that I have this ability to connect with people who are wiser than me, that are more mature. Maybe perhaps I'm an old soul, I don't know, but I'm able to surround myself with these folks who've served as inspiration to me, which is why I'm, in my career and in professional career and in social life, I'm where I am today is because of these folks who provided guidance and wisdom and expertise. Speaking of success habits, what are some of your success habits?
Well, I don't know if they're success habits. They're just habits. Well, I guess maybe one of them is just taking care of my physical and mental health. And well, I guess spiritual, physical, mental, and social health. So I do it very intentionally. And some people do kind of the physical, but they don't do the social or the spiritual or the mental. And I try to hit all four for myself, because I've always been in like these helping professions, and there's a lot of trauma in the work that I've done over the years. So self-care on all those dimensions is really important. So that's a habit, a success habit. I read a lot. I don't wait for other people to tell me what to do. I grew up in a very proactive family, and so taking initiative and being proactive for my own learning and all the decisions I make, that's just been ingrained inside of me. I think that's a success habit, because I talk to a lot of people who at work or otherwise, they're kind of waiting for some big opportunity to come, but they've done nothing to prepare for it. Like, it's my employer. I mean, you work in HR. My employer is supposed to give me all these training dollars. I'm like, good luck. Your employer is trying to get work done. They're not. It's like they can be invested in you, and a lot of employers are, but they're not responsible for your nourishment and growth. I mean, you have to be proactive about that. I guess another success habit I have is just believing always in any room that there's more collective wisdom from all parties than just my wisdom. Unless I'm acting as the boss and I have to make a hard decision. One of the habits for me is always make sure that I listen to every single perspective. I understand every single argument. Even if I don't agree with the person across from me, it's always about the good of the whole. Never my good, never just what one person wants. And so that tends to get me through very difficult decisions, knowing how to do that. And then I guess, the other, maybe I don't know if it's really a success habit or not, but I grew up with this saying from my parents that if you can't keep your own house cleanly swept or well ordered, then you had no business telling anybody else anything. And that's kind of like a habit around never being critical of what other people are doing, because I'm not perfect yet, right? Like, there's no you can't judge other families or other opportunities or other people. Like, there's always got to be humility in how you say things, either the feedback that you give or the work that you're doing or whatever. And so that sometimes, like, when I listen to younger Hmong people, they think very like, they think it's very literal, right? Like, it's like literally cleaning the house. And I'm like, no. That what that means is that you should not be a harsh critic of others. And that, if you're going to say something, you're going to give people feedback, that you for sure need to have that lived experience. And a lot of times you can't have that lived experience. So be very careful about the words that you choose and how you deliver advice to others. It's really about advice giving. So I've made it a habit over the years to not give advice to people who aren't seeking it. and to give, to be generous with my time when people are seeking it. And I have to say, when I was younger, I was not very good at that success habit because, here I was, graduate degree, working in the community. I thought I knew a lot. But it turned out that I was not very good at what I was doing. Other people knew way more than I did. So that's a success habit related to just withholding, withholding judgment and giving feedback in a way that people can hear.
Right.
Yeah, using my own experiences and never replacing my experience for someone else's.
That's powerful, and I love that. I also believe that it since you have a strong self-awareness, and where you can play your cards, or how you show up, depending on which room you're in, and it takes an effective leader to see all of that through. And so the other thing I wanted to mention too is it's an inside out approach, right? Like, you gave an example of sweeping your house before you can go and give advice to other people. Effective leadership is about leading from the inside out. If you have worked and self-mastered yourself, then you can show up more effectively and help others.
Yeah. Effective leaders are better able to see themselves as others do. In other words, they have a more accurate understanding of how they're presenting to the world. And it's because there's congruence between the inside and the outside. They're not pretending to be anything they're not. That's the easier way to say it. So like the best leaders I've met, they are who they are, regardless whether they're talking to you or some Fortune 500 CEO or someone else. It's not like they're changing themselves like a chameleon,
right,
to meet all the other audiences or whatever it might be. And so that consistency of that congruence is really important. And I think that self-reflection and emotional intelligence is a part of it, but it's also just a lot of mistake making and experience over the years. In other words, kind of my comment earlier, who I am now as a more mature leader wasn't how I was when I started. There were many failures along the way. And so where I've seen people fail is, and they veer away from their core purpose or what they're wanting to do. It's because it's hard. It's difficult. It's difficult to be a good person, to be the kind of person that you yourself can be proud of. And so you veer off that path because it's just easier to let it go. And if that's okay with you, then go ahead. But usually doesn't lead to a very purpose-driven life, because the more afraid you get from where you think you should be, the more upset you get, right? And so that's a dynamic that happens throughout your lifetime. And then you just make mistakes. I mean, and I've been yelled at. People have sent hate mail. Let's see.
I mean, it means you're doing something good.
Oh yeah, but like I also tell people, one of the things I've gotten used to in leadership is not everyone will like you. They will not like you. And if you're making progress, especially with community work, which is what I've done most of my life, people are not going to like you. And you have to say, okay, well, I guess I'm okay not being liked. And I mean, I'm making progress, and that's good enough for me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's this, you remind me of a quote, what you just said, remind me of a quote of the men in the arena. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but I'm only interested in people's feedback if they're in the same arena as me, using their energy, sweat, blood, and tear to do the same exact things that I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm not interested in their feedback.
Yeah.
And,
right. You're not qualified to give me feedback is usually kind of how it comes across. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. And goes, and of course, this goes back to your earlier point about, until you're able to take care of what's at home, you can't really give advice. But also, this concept that I want to mention to you it's the decency quotient, which is the idea that, so it takes emotional intelligence and goes beyond that and says, okay, so if I'm supervising my employee, I have the ability to read him. And whether what I choose with that information is up to my decency quotient.
Mhm.
And so, and I'm surprised that people in the psychology arena, people who are in the people business, aren't really talking about this quotient, because it's important, right? Because if a leader has high emotional intelligence, that's great, but what do they choose to do with that information? To use as good or bad is up to that person. And
Yeah.
so I've certainly had good and bad bosses in my professional career, and some of them are ranked high on emotional intelligence, but lack the decency to
Yeah.
develop me to be the most effective person that I can be in my business.
Yeah. 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 I mean, so my daughter went to college and she came home and she was like, Mom, this is why it's so hard to be your daughter. I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, well, I was studying all the different movements in America, and basically you taught us how to be transcendentalists. So transcendentalism was a movement in New England
Oh my
during
goodness.
yeah, during the Revolutionary War. Actually, during the Civil War. Oh, starting during the Revolutionary War, kind of matured over the Civil War. And it's just the belief that our purpose as human beings is to continuously reflect and become better versions of ourselves, and contributing to advancing the common good. So anyway, her thing was, it's so hard to be your daughter, because, and I said, oh well, I've never thought about it that way, but yes, I think that, and it kind of depends on which sector you're working in. I mean, we're talking about people who live and drive towards a purpose-driven life, and that's not everybody you meet in leadership.
Right.
And so, no criticism. It's just a different way of leading and being. Some people are really driven by ambition, competition, profit. Some people are really motivated by status. Some people are really motivated by just the limelight. I mean, and so I think that's maybe one of the reasons why this podcast is important is, when people are starting to chase purpose, it's because they know that there's a limited time on earth. They know, yeah, they know that they have one life to live. And that if this life ended in like the next, like 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, 10 years, what would really be left undone that they would regret? And so I was just lucky because I had early experiences in my life that led me to believe that if I could do anything, I was going to live a meaningful life, and it was not going to be about chasing money or power or just doing. I really wanted to be here on earth for ordinary people and people who were struggling, and that was just an early discernment for me. Now the fact that I moved on and did a bunch of amazing things and have run big shops, I mean, great, but that's not what I set out to do, and I had no idea. I go on leadership panels and people are like, well, how did you get to where you're? I'm like, well, just kept doing a good job at whatever was handed to me. Usually they were rough jobs, like they were tough situations that no one else really wanted to deal with, and I was usually the most junior person who was present, who raised my hand, because remember, I'm proactive. So I would just like, instead of sinking, I would swim ahead, and that's really what happened. Yeah.
Well, you're so incredible, and you serve such inspiration to me and to the people I know who know you. And I'm so grateful for our time here, and also just so thankful we have a someone like you who we can look up to as a role model. And I definitely consider you as one of the top people that I look up to in my spiritual journey, or purpose driven life, or leadership journey, or whatever you call it. Because what I've realized is that folks like yourself are rare to find, and I want to keep you close. And if there's anything I could do to ensure that I am adding value to your mission, please let me know, as well as those folks who are listening to the show. With that said, we are about time. Where can people find you should they choose to connect with you through this podcast?
Yeah, so I'm the founding dean for the Morrison Family College of Health, and I am actually trying to find students who want to join us at the University of St. Thomas, who want to live and move through a purpose-driven life. So we are trying to look for students who want to come and change the world into what they want it to be. And a lot more of what we're talking about today than maybe, I'm not saying that other colleges or universities aren't great, but looking for students who have a change the world mindset. So if you want to find me, you can find me at health.stthomas.edu. Go to the College of Health website and look me up. I'm the dean, so it's kind of easy to find me. There's a really big picture of me right there. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. MayKao, thank you again so much for your time. Appreciate it. And folks, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, please, I do encourage you to connect with MayKao. And until then, we'll stay in touch.
Great. Thank you.